Kind of an off-topic question, but Governor, I know there's been some pushback recently on offering free health care to undocumented immigrants as it pertains to the state budget deficit. Are you eyeing a possible rollback of that expansion?
Well, we'll get that budget out there. No, I'm committed to it. I'm committed. I believe in universal health care. I believe it's a fundamental right. I'm proud of the fact the legislature embraced that vision and has been advancing it since 2016 when we initiated as one of the first states to advance that effort. So it's well within our capacity to make that investment, and we made that commitment years ago, and we're going to fulfill that commitment. And by the way, one of our commitments as well, we created a new Office of Healthcare Affordability, was to drive down the costs of healthcare. That framework has just been established, and a big part of what this represents is the opportunity to drive down the costs, not just of healthcare more broadly, but particularly drug costs and breakthroughs as it relates to solving and curing things like cancer and other chronic diseases. And so this is all in line in that spirit and that zeitgeist.
Okay. A wider off-topic question. I know that the Assembly Committee on Retail Theft recently
We're going way off. We're actually in an old mall. That's not very far off.
That's why I did it, yeah.
Yeah, no, well done. Well done.
I know the Assembly Committee on Retail Theft recently had its first meeting as you also announced a big uptick in retail theft arrests by the CHP. What do you hope to see out of that committee?
Well, I'll leave that to the legislature. I just know what we're seeing. We're seeing real progress in this space. 2.5 years ago, we launched a new retail theft task force. We put hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in vertical prosecution grants. We've provided over 1,000 new CHP officers. In fact, we have a new academy class closing, I think, just this week, another 100 folks that will be coming out. We've taken this very seriously. We've been very proactive, not just here in Southern California, but throughout the state of California. And you see from those numbers, those arrests are up. And the prosecutions, we're starting to see more and more prosecutions, not just arrests. We want to see real accountability. We take it very, very seriously, and I'm very grateful to the legislature for 2 years being on top of this, not just on top of a hearing a few weeks ago.
To your take on the GOP presidential primary so far?
Well, I mean, DeSantis is toast. That's self-evident. I don't think he's even spending much time in New Hampshire. He's given up on that. I don't know a state he can win in a primary. So that's for certain. It's Trump's to lose. Time to recognize that and look forward. The Biden administration has already understood this, and the rest of us to get on with it and clarify the choice and the consequences of a second Trump term. So I think for all effective, regardless, if he wins on Tuesday, it's done. But regardless, even what happens on Tuesday in New Hampshire, this race is over. Donald Trump's going to be the nominee yet again, and we've got our work cut out for us as Democrats.
Hi, I'm Michael Sladen with the Orange County Register. Governor, the city and county, this is related to Tustin Hangar Fire, the city and county have been asking for you to issue an emergency proclamation so residents can get reimbursed and the city won't have a dire budget situation. Will you or will you not be issuing one, and why?
Well, the emergency's passed, so the emergency deck won't have any effectiveness in terms of reimbursements. In terms of, you're asking about a disaster declaration, has to reach a third threshold. Major disaster deck actually has a numeric legal threshold of about $73 million. As it relates to this specific issue, it doesn't reach those thresholds. And as a consequence, federal property, federal responsibility. And I think, Supervisor, you made some comments about that, and I appreciate that understanding. It just doesn't reach the thresholds under the state laws. So I can fake it, but then I'm going to be in jail myself at the Supreme Court asking for forgiveness. So we just are not, it's just not at that level of threshold that would trigger state resources. And in particular, this is a federal responsibility. We are working with the federal government, my Office of Emergency Service, to make sure the federal government is aggressively assessing the true costs and getting those reimbursement checks. I think they've already identified about 11 million of 15.9 that we've had a chance to review. So there's some progress, and we want to see more into the future. And we're working closely with the county, working closely with the feds in that respect to make sure you get reimbursed more broadly in this space.
One more question with regard to Prop 1. Obviously, there was some opposition to this. What do you say to those critics, opponents who say that Prop 1 is going to cut funding to already successful programs?
Well, it's all about prioritization. It's all about making determination. It's all about change. If you support the status quo, then that argument holds a lot of weight. I don't. I don't know many people that do. I don't know anybody that voted against this that support the status quo. I just haven't met them. And so this is a different approach. This is a new strategy change. It's a component part of dozen initiatives that we advance. I didn't even mention all the other work we've done on making eligible all our mobile outreach, $1.4 billion, the workforce investments that are unprecedented in state's history, 0 to 26. I'll remind you, $4.6 billion, almost $4.7 billion of additional new resources to focus on wellness centers and coaches and support for our youth, all part and parcel of this larger mosaic of support. And so, you know, as it relates to those that support the status quo, I say with respect, it's time for change.
Thank you, Governor.
Last question.
Could you talk a little more to how this new funding will assist with the implementation of Care Court, and what would you say to address people's concerns that both Prop 1 and Care Court could be used to compel people into involuntary mental health treatment?
Well, Care Court is not substituted care, it's supported care. So foundationally, its pathway is very different. It has a due process component, it has court oversight, it has support public advocates. And it's a process that unfolded in terms of consensus over the course of a year, working to address those civil liberty concerns. But it is about change, and it is about making change in terms of those that can get help that currently are not getting help. The conservatorship reform even goes further. If there was a criticism or argument, or at least a stated concern that was amplified on Care Court, it was around the imperative of having housing support. Well, Prop 1 just answered that concern fundamentally and foundationally. And so that, I think, only clears the decks, not just on Care Court, but conservatorship. And so the question I'm asking myself, and I'll ask it publicly, and I look forward to getting answered, why is anyone delaying on conservatorship reform? Why is any county delaying on moving on conservatorship reform? People are dying now on our watch. Why are they delaying? Everybody needs to step up. The state of California has not been invested in this space for half a century. We've done our job. Now the cities and counties need to step up. Counties need to implement conservatorship. In those counties, thank you to LA, moving in with Care Court and others. I want to see all those other counties. They don't have to wait till the end of the year to enter into Care Court. They have that right, but I want to see those 50 counties that haven't yet move a little more quickly. And so that's the spirit of the moment. Again, not as sparring partners, but as working partners. But again, the urgency that is required at this moment requires us to be a little bit more candid and express ourselves a little bit more publicly the way we've been privately in terms of our expectation setting as it relates to addressing this issue. And so I appreciate very much your question. And I appreciate everybody up here that made this happen. This is one of those classic cases where every single thing we did mattered. And had we not done one of those things, we may not be in this position. And so that's a hell of a thing for all of you to consider your own individual contribution, our collective effort. And so I just thank you for that. But now let's get to work, and I'm looking forward to getting something big done. And thank you to the people of the state of California for advancing this historic effort. Thank you all very, very much.
Good morning, Governor. Matt Bigler, KCBS San Francisco. I want to ask about Oakland. In recent weeks and months, you've ordered extra CHP officers, special prosecutors, and most recently, cameras, license plate reading cameras. We saw the video of you along Hagenberger.
Oh, yeah.
The question is, how soon do you think all of these efforts will start to lower the out-of-control crime in Oakland, and how soon will Oakland residents start to feel safer?
Well, I think I've been there a lot. I'm there pretty much every week. I'm hearing from business owners and residents that it is already having an impact. We update you on a consistent basis, the CHP, the number of stolen vehicles. that we've recovered, the number of arrests that we have made, the number of guns we've taken off the streets. So that's immediate. That's being felt. Not just in Oakland. We have that CHP operations moved into other parts of the East Bay. The flock cameras that we're putting up are very familiar to Californians, particularly those in the Bay Area. There's the same flock cameras that use similar technology that toll bridges use, Amber Alert system use. We're going to have 480 of those in and around Oakland on the freeways and thoroughfares and within Oakland proper. We're going to get those up in the next few months. That's not coming overnight, but that's a significant procurement, and it adds and stacks to all the other work we're doing, including the 10-point Caltrans plan and the work we're doing on community building, not just a law enforcement focused plan. And as you noted, and I appreciate your reference, we have JAGs that will be coming to support the District of Attorney, and we're working with the state DOJ, Rob Bonta's office, to also aid in the prosecution of cases in Oakland as well. So it's all part of a multi-pronged plan. I said it wasn't going to be episodic. I said it wasn't going to be one-off. And I think the proof point is in the frame of your question. We've been there for consistent announcements, and we'll continue to be there until we feel like Oakland on their own can take the baton. We did something similar in San Francisco. We feel like San Francisco directionally is moving in a very positive way and place. And just a preview, we will look forward soon to making additional announcements in other cities throughout the state of California to address some of their concerns as well.
Hey, Governor. Well, I haven't talked in a while. Angela Hart, KFF Health News. Thank you. I have recently the state auditor found that California wasn't doing a great job on tracking its homelessness spending. And this isn't a gotcha question. You're doing more than any other governor in the country, really, to address this crisis. So I have a two-parter for you. Do you acknowledge, Governor, is your administration doing enough to determine whether the money that's being plowed into homelessness is being well spent? And do you worry? I'm curious. Do you worry that the appetite is souring among the public for spending more, given the lack of progress that's happening?
No, I appreciate the question and the frame. It's the right question. So one I ask myself all the time. As you know from the audit, one of the vexing issues that was highlighted in the audit was local appropriations, local data collection. And it's difficult at the state level. I say it often, localism is determinative, and each city and county has different strategies and approaches. We've tried to level set that to your subsequent question about doing enough. As you know, a few years ago, we required accountability plans before we submitted at least one of the discretionary portions, the HAP program, to cities and counties and CICs. I rejected the first plans because I didn't think there was enough transparency and accountability and ambition. We supported the last plans. I also acknowledge that we need to do more, not just in the homeless bucket, but also the mental health / homelessness bucket. That's why Proposition 1 had subsequent reforms as it relates to requirement by July of 2026 to have one single plan for all funding sources for mental health at the local level with more transparency, auditing, and oversight, again, of the local spend. So that audit didn't surprise me in the least, quite the contrary. Also, third, and this is really important, Angela, you know this well, but for others perhaps don't, we also promoted, and I couldn't be more proud of Member Ward introducing just a few days ago, the proposal to take the framework of our housing accountability unit, which, by the way, has unlocked 23,000 housing units in the state. I'm really proud of their work. And to connect a homeless component into that accountability framework, which I think is deeply in the spirit and the zeitgeist of what the audit was at least showcasing. And so that's another tool we hope we are able to have if the legislature embraces it in the next few weeks.
I'm sorry, Governor, I didn't hear responses to either of those questions about whether this is state money ultimately. I understand it goes to the counties, but do you acknowledge whether the money that the state isn't doing enough to ensure that the money is being well spent? I also didn't hear a response to whether you think that there's any, I mean, is the public appetite, do you think, I'm hearing this, like souring towards putting more money into the crisis? I didn't hear responses to either of those.
Well, and forgive me, I'll if I appear to repeat the first response. So the audit did not surprise me. The state has advanced unprecedented investments, you're correct, and unprecedented interventions demanding more accountability with state money at the local level. That's why we created a framework for the first state plan under the HAP money. The fact that I rejected it in many ways is implicit in response to the question. I rejected it for a reason around the issue of lack of accountability in terms of ambition and in terms of what was presented in that first plan. The fact that we're creating a housing accountability unit or created one and we want to incorporate homelessness into that also is implicit in response to your question about the need to do more around state money. And the other work we did with Proposition 1 to foundationally reform an existing stream of funding to provide more transparency and state oversight of the local spend, again, is a third, I think, reinforcement of my acknowledgement about the need to see more accountability and why I agreed, as I said, with many of the recommendations and was not surprised, as I noted, with the audit itself. As it relates to the public mood, no question. More is not always better. People want, they want to see results. I've been very crystal clear about that. I've been focused, as you know, particularly on the results we want to see on the streets and sidewalks and tents and the issues around encampments. That's why those encampment resolution grants we think are a national model. Also been very insistent that we need to move some barriers in terms of engagement as it relates to accountability and results at the local level, as it relates to the grants passed and the amicus brief we filed with the United States Supreme Court. So all of those are demonstrable responses, not rhetorical, but demonstrable responses to both components of your question.
Thank you. That was that was extremely thorough. Thank you.
When it comes to the southern border with Mexico, California has proven time and time again that it's willing to tackle the hardest problems. But Republicans in Congress choose cynicism and the dangerous path of chaos instead of doing their job to help us secure the border. Think of this. For all their talk of securing the border, they rejected over and over and over again the opportunity to add thousands of new border agents and new immigration judges, as well as personnel, and hundreds of millions of dollars to support local communities near the border. And for what? Pure, unadulterated partisan politics. When they speak about immigrants poisoning American blood and mass deportations and detention camps, this is the language of destruction of 1939, when Governor Olson issued his warning. California is home to the busiest land port in the Western Hemisphere, and we've addressed the problems at the border with resolve. We also addressed it with resources, not plain politics. I'll give you an example. The vast majority of fentanyl seized at the border, we know, comes through ports of entry. And that's exactly why we've deployed the National Guard to stop the flow of this deadly drug into our state and the impact it has across the United States, allowing Border Patrol agents to do their job. These operations have resulted in the seizure of over 62,000 pounds of fentanyl in 2023, a 1,066% increase since 2021. In the first 5 months just of this year alone, counter-drug operations have led to the seizure of some estimated 5.8 million pills containing fentanyl statewide. At the same time, California has proudly provided humanitarian assistance and temporary shelter to migrants and their families along the border communities, easing the burden to local cities. Unfortunately, California has largely had to go this alone, again, because Republicans in Congress, when presented with an opportunity to assist border states, have turned their back. They've chosen politics, chosen inertia, and they've advanced pure political pandering. When it comes to America's homeless problem, California's detractors have similarly offered nothing but rhetoric, moaning and casting blame. No state, by the way, has done more as California in addressing this pernicious problem of homelessness plaguing cities and towns, not just across the state of California, but increasingly across the United States. Too many politicians for too long have ignored this problem. Let me remind you, just as an example, when I got here in 2019, there was no state homeless strategy, no state homeless plan. There was no significant investment. Sure, there was a $500 million contribution one time made to local government, but there was no expectation of anything in return, accountability. There was no demonstrable results expected. When I came into office, we wanted to change that paradigm. That's why I presented a state of the state exclusively on the issue of homelessness and mental health. This was my commitment to California. We would no longer ignore this most pressing and distressing problem. Since then, by the way, we've cleared now over 9,300 dangerous encampments, and we're helping tens of thousands of people move from tents and freeway underpasses to shelter or housing. Our innovative Home Key program has revitalized former motels, hotels, and apartments and provided more than 15,300 units of housing. Combined with Project Room Key, California has now provided shelter for more than 71,000 people. While the causes of homelessness are indeed complex, the solution is rather simple: housing and supportive services. Housing and supportive services. That's why we've focused our reforms specifically to address the housing needs as it relates to reforming CEQA. I've signed now 32 CEQA reforms to build more housing faster, at the same time creating more accountability by establishing a housing accountability unit to hold cities and counties accountable to following the law. Here are the results. Just in the last year or two, we've seen some 442 actions against local government, including lawsuits to compel them to follow the law. The success of accountability in the housing space is why we're adding similar accountability and oversight for homelessness. We're requiring cities now and counties to account for how they spend taxpayer dollars to get people off the streets and sidewalks, out of tents, and into housing. Look, it's so long as there are people living outdoors, so long as people are suffering from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, paranoia, self-medicating with drug or alcohol addictions, our work clearly is not done. Most importantly, though, we have created a mosaic of extraordinarily transformative and impactful mental health reforms. It started with a new paradigm of thinking, Care Court, a nation-leading effort that provides treatment and housing for people with the most serious, untreated mental health challenges. This is critical to help exhausted and financially stressed families that have been trying to help relatives, loved ones stuck in the dark in unimaginable pain, suffering so often alone. Thanks to Susan Eggman, Tom Umberg, this program is moving out of the pilot phase. It'll be up and running in every county in the state of California by the end of this year. We also took on the difficult and politically fraught task of conservatorship reform. How many decades have we been discussing the issue of conservatorship reform, saying it was necessary but increasingly impossible to achieve? Well, we achieved it. Now, for the first time, we're helping to find meaningful solutions for families with relatives suffering from acute mental health and substance abuse disorders. Perhaps the steepest hill to climb was tackling the changes that were necessary as well, the Mental Health Services Act. This year, we made a dramatic shift to focus the law on those struggling the most, to shift resources to housing and supportive services. This is the biggest effort in our lifetime to combat substance abuse and mental health as well. And this is a future that was advanced because of all of you. Proposition 1, it's the future that you provided us. With the support of the California voters, we were able now to build over 11,000 new beds and housing units for those with the most challenging mental illness. And we're requiring counties and cities in the state to focus existing money on housing and treatment for the toughest cases. And critically, we're guaranteeing a portion of those homes will go to veterans living on the streets, many of them suffering from PTSD.
Hi, Governor. Thank you. Hearing you say that you're all in, but the New York Times this morning had an op-ed written by George Clooney, one of the president's biggest fundraisers and allies, calling you out by name among other Democratic leaders to settle on a new candidate to figure out what it will take to go into the convention united. Can you please respond?
I have not read this op-ed this morning. I was frankly focused on the nuances and details of the procurement for what is it, the wildfire suppression underbelly on the C-130s. So I haven't had a chance to read it. Look, a lot of people expressing their opinion, and I respect people actively participating in our democracy by expressing themselves. But I don't have any comment as it relates to George, who I've known for years and years, admire and respect. And he's been an incredible supporter of Democratic causes, Democratic candidates for years and years and years. I'll take a look and and perhaps I'll have more to say after I read the op-ed. Thank you. Support, and we're going to provide it.
Thanks, Governor.
Thanks.
Thank you, Governor. Following up on a national topic that was brought up yesterday, George Clooney says that the Joe Biden America saw on the debate stage is the same one that he saw at the Peacock Theater. You were there at the fundraiser and you were there at the debate. Are you not seeing what he sees?
No, well, I think all of us that were at that fundraiser wondering what they were thinking of scheduling the president, who just got overseas to a fundraiser late at night. And I came home very exhausted that night. And all I had to do was fly down from Sacramento to L.A. I think the first comments I had to the president were like, who did your schedule? I couldn't even handle 3 hours and a red eye, let alone coming from overseas. So to me, those are two different things. The person that showed up at that fundraiser was a human being, like any of us, exhausted. But as it relates to the debate, that's a whole different debate and conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think there's anything more urgent and more frustrating than addressing the issue of encampments in the state of California. Over the course of the last number of years, the state has stepped up, where in the past we provided no support, no resources to cities and counties to clean up encampments like this. Today, we've invested now over $1 billion in encampment resolution grants, not only to clean up sites like this, but to address the underlying issue in the first place. One of the big issues, though, that has been an impediment was the courts. In the past, the courts have denied the ability for local government, including the state, to clean up many of these encampments. Today, I announced an executive order to move the process forward. We're done. It's time to move with urgency at the local level to clean up these sites, to focus on public health and focus on public safety. There are no longer any excuses. $1 billion this state has invested to support communities to clean up these encampments. We have now no excuse with the Supreme Court decision. This executive order is about pushing that paradigm further and getting a sense of urgency that's required of local government to do their job.
I appreciate you reminding everybody what this project was about. It was for people with disabilities, and it was denied 66, 67 unit development. At the same time, the city was approving similar sized developments, but not for people with disabilities. So just want to sort of level set the why we're here. But I came enthusiastically when I heard about this press conference today, because I wanted to thank the Attorney General. I want to thank him for his partnership, for his leadership, not just his stewardship, for taking this a theory of the case that we had a few years ago relating to housing accountability to a whole nother level, and driving that accountability and backing up that accountability. We came up with an idea a few years ago, $4.3 million set aside in the budget. We had 25 or so folks that we had identified to develop and design this unit. We were hopeful it would produce real results. Never did we expect an Attorney General to associate himself and partner so forcefully with that unit in a collaborative space that has advanced demonstrable results in just a few years. So again, gratitude and respect for your team. Many of them we had an opportunity to talk to just a moment ago, to our team collectively in the state of California for their good work, and for the legislature for enabling and supporting this process the entire time. Thank you, ultimately, the folks in Elk Grove for eventually doing the right thing. However they found their way there, they eventually landed in the right spot, and ultimately, despite the denial, the delay, we won't ultimately be denied more units as the Attorney General laid out. As it relates to the deeper issue, and I won't belabor the points because they've been made more eloquently than I could, this is the original sin in the state of California. We can't make up for 50 years of neglect. The world we invented in many respects is now competing against us. I said it ad nauseum. You've heard me, it's a bingo card. State vision is realized at the local level. Localism is determinative as it relates to housing, as it relates to all policy making. And NIMBYism has gotten in the way of progress, and it has impacted the quality of life and the cost of living in the state of California. There's no issue that impacts the state in more ways on more days than the issue of housing. If there was one, I get this question all the time, if there's one thing you would do in the state of California, I'd rewind the last 50 years as it relates to housing policy and do exactly what we are doing now. Not only as it relates to accountability, but flexibility and land use reform, SEQA reform. I have signed 34 SEQA reform bills. as governor of the state of California, providing resources and a resourceful mindset to support with technical assistance, support communities large and small all across this state. And we have been doing that. Now, the most important thing is to tune in and see what the Fed does with interest rates and continue the progress as we tame inflation to see those interest rates decline and to start getting the housing production moving again in the state of California. 2.5 million. That's the new established legal goals by 2030 in the state of California under this RENA process. The housing element we continue to enforce. And I want to thank in closing on this, we continue to improve upon our graduated sanctions strategy. We have not rested on our laurels. We're not standing still. And I want to thank, in particular, the legislature. One bill that I will acknowledge I will sign. None of those you ask me will I lay claim to that process, at least, or that conclusion, that is. But 1037, SB 1037, Scott Wiener, working with our office very collaboratively, has created a process so we can stop the abuses of places like Huntington Beach that continue doesn't get it. Not only do they not get things done, they don't get it. The crisis of affordability and the manifestation of the very problem they criticize and complain about. They are a poster child, continue to be a poster child. And I guess it's just they need attention. But they also need to get their act together. They're wasting millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. They continue to lose over and over and over and over again. 1037 will remedy the sanction component of that judicial abuse and process once and for all. And so, once again, we put Huntington Beach on notice, and I will conclude formally because I began formally as governor of California, asserting the state's right on behalf of 40 million people to move in a different direction and hold Huntington Beach accountable. You may recall 47 jurisdictions we called out in that first press conference among the first few days I was in office. Huntington Beach continues to thumb their nose despite, as I said, losing month in, not just year in, month out, year out. And that abuse soon will come to an end. We look forward to more progress, more housing, and more settlements because of the Attorney General's leadership in this space.
I'm wondering if, given the latest school shooting, if there's like a new reconsideration. I know school shootings are not new, but there are parents who are saying they see these text messages from kids who think they're saying goodbye in a text.
Yeah. No, I think that's weighted in the consideration. And the consideration being this. My understanding of the bill, at least my hope and expectation as it relates to the work we've done together, is there's a process that's going to unfold, and there'll be all kinds of considerations. I'd hate to see another school shooting be the reason that we bring TVs into the classroom and that disrupt our children's education. Because in essence, that's what a cell phone is equivalent to, bringing a TV into the classroom and disrupting the ability to get quality academic time. As it relates to the issues of security, I don't know that that should be on the basis of an individual student's role and responsibility. I think that should be more broadly the schools and the school districts. As it relates to the issue of school shootings, I would hope that we would have leaders that would not assign them as fate and claim, well, there's just a fact of life, whether we like it or not, just a fact of life, and roll over. The statements from the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, and Senator Vance were disappointing and unsurprising. They've done nothing to advance the cause of safety in our schools, nothing whatsoever. They've done nothing to address the issue of gun violence in this country. They will do nothing, God forbid, if they're in the White House. Number one killer of our children is guns, and they will do nothing to address the number one killer of our children. But the issue of cell phones, I think, is much broader and richer and deeper. And there's a process, as you know, with the implementation date, my understanding of that bill, that will give us time to process and to address concerns that many would have around the how. And it's much broader than that one concern about access to the phone in case of emergency, a lot of other issues around securing the item, around exemptions as it relates to those that would be banned that may have unique health or medical needs or have particular concerns that may be expressed by parents that would address their health and safety on an individual basis. All of that will be part of this process.
Hey, Governor, Jeremy White with Politico. You signed a bill this week prohibiting the intentional sharing of manipulated deepfakes of candidates in campaign season. Since you signed that bill, Elon Musk has reshared the video that drew your ire in the first place. There are deepfakes out there of you endorsing Donald Trump, saying you are an agent of the Chinese Communist Party. Do you intend to seek legal action, whether it's against Elon Musk or anyone else, as this law now gives you standing to do, to remove these things?
Well, look, I mean, we just signed the law. It's by no means novel. Like Alabama has a similar law. Florida has a similar law. Washington has a similar law. Ours goes a little further because it talks about election workers and what happens after the election. That's why I'm really proud of the work the legislature did in that respect, 60 days post-election, where we anticipate seeing deep fakes and manipulation as it relates to voting integrity. That is a profound distinction in our law. But I think Mr. Musk has missed the punchline. Parity is still alive and well in California, but deep fakes and manipulation of elections, that hurts democracy and the integrity of the system and trust. And we believe in truth and trust, and we think this law is sound and will be upheld in the courts.
So do you intend to seek legal action, whether on Elon Musk or any of the proliferating deepfakes
the
of you?
The law asserts that many can seek injunction relief, and I just signed the law. I just signed 32 other bills on housing, and I haven't had a chance to review the specific lawsuit around a conservative blogger that seems offended by our law, but not the Alabama law or the Florida law.
Thanks, Governor.
Thanks.
Governor Stephen Hobbs from the Sacramento Bee, you alluded to the comments of Donald Trump over the weekend just about, aid for, with emergency aid for the state if California doesn't defer more water, and also just that he would cancel California's 2035 mandate on new car sales. So just want to get your response to those comments.
I mean, he's more unhinged than he's ever been. He's more derivative, boring. He is more boring than he's ever been. I don't know what more to say. And he's more un-American than any nominee for president in my lifetime.
Hi, Governor. Alexi Casa from Cal Matters. Shortly before the start of this press conference, your office released a video criticizing the oil industry for trying to scare voters into voting for Donald Trump. What did you mean by that? And is this proposal intended as political punishment for an industry that took a position in this presidential election that you disagree with?
I think you're aware in the last few years we have pursued accountability and transparency as it relates to the oil industry. Predates any election. We have advanced that cause here in the second year as it relates to the second special session. As it relates to Donald Trump, I think my positions as it relates to former President Donald Trump are well established and very consistent, including the comments that I tend to share on almost a daily basis, including, apparently, a video that you just watched.
So what does the oil industry's supposed support for President Trump have to do with this proposal, and why mention it in the video?
I think when a former president of the United States asks for $1 billion in a room of oil industry executives to roll back your regulations, I think that should scare the hell out of you. And it sure as hell scares the hell.
Hi, Governor. I was also going to ask about Prop 36, but I think my colleagues have covered it for today, so I'll ask you about something else. There's been, a lot as the presidential campaign enters its final stages. There's been a lot of discussion about former President Trump's plan to deport a lot of people who are in the country illegally. I wonder, what impact do you think, if he's elected again, what impact do you think that would have on California's economy and on our state specifically?
Well, no state has more to lose or more to gain in this election in November. If Donald Trump is successful with mass deportation, no state will be more impacted from a fiscal perspective and economic perspective. The number of mixed status families in the state, second to none. Again, we're a state with 27% of the population foreign born, majority minority state. And we have a larger number of dreamers and TPS holders and others, and the impacts from valley to valley, Silicon Valley to Central Valley would be outsized. The chilling effect it would have would be outsized. We're the tentpole of the American economy. It's the largest economy in the United States of America, not just the largest state. The innovation that has inspired the world that comes out of the state, and a lot of it supported by immigrants and inspired by immigrants, not a lot, significant amount. All of that would be significantly impacted. So it's a next level concern. And of course, what you saw last night was, just the rank racism that was on display last night at that rally, and things that were said that just cannot be allowed to be normalized and accepted. It's just disgraceful. The childishness of Donald Trump and the nicknames aside, it's a remarkable moment in American history, and so keeping our eye on that, and that's the election that matters more in more ways on more days will matter more to Californians than any other. So I hope people continue to take very seriously that threat, and your question is going to be a question top of mind, God forbid, if he's the next president, for not just the 40 million Americans that live in California, but for hundreds of millions of Americans that will wonder what the hell happened to their country if indeed we go back to mass deportation camps.
And just to follow up on that quickly, you said, it would impact valley to valley. I think there's been a lot of coverage of how, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what you were referring to with that, but farming industries could be impacted by a big reduction in the undocumented workforce. Can you be more specific about what you mean when you talk about the impact in Silicon Valley, or are there other industries in California that would also be impacted in ways that maybe people aren't thinking about or talking about as much?
The construction industry, look at the healthcare industry, look at the hospitality industry. Come on, I mean, the restaurant industry, not just agricultural industry. The chilling effect it would have is our ability to recruit the best and the brightest from around the rest of the world. One of the great successes of California, great successes of America, is our ability to get first-round draft choices from around the rest of the world because of our open environment around inclusivity and people feeling like they can be seen and heard. I mean, it's the spirit of Ronald Reagan, and that wonderful speech he gave, his last speech at the White House, the torch of Lady Liberty, and the vibrancy of newcomers, and how you can move to France, but you can't become French. But in America, we stand for something above and beyond. It's extraordinary how far we've fallen in that respect. Reagan understood that because he was from California. He understood the dream was attached to that. There's two dreams, the American dream and the California dream, and it's predicated on that. And so I do see the life force, as he said, of newcomers as being critical to the success of this great state in our nation. And I think there'll be a chilling effect across industries. I highlighted one of the dominant industries, the most vibrant industries, which is, what separates the game played here versus anywhere else in this country, and the contributions that immigrants have played in terms of our innovative economy and our entrepreneurial economy and how it's impacted Silicon Valley. And so that's, again, that's just one frame, but I think across the spectrum, the chilling effect would be outsized. And again, if you don't have to take my word for it, take a look at the 270 proposals that Donald Trump himself have identified with in that Project 2025 proposal, that blueprint that he's identified with, and consider the fact that 75% of the authors of Project 2025 worked for the Trump administration in one way, shape, or form, and consider the details that are laid out in that plan when you consider the larger issue around mixed status families and immigration and what this could do to impact the state of California, our nation, impact our economy, and our moral standing around the rest of the world.